Welcome to the It's Your Choice podcast, where we learn how to rewire our brains to live the life we desire. On with the show. Welcome to It's Your Choice podcast. Today on the show, we have Bonnie D'Arcangelo, and Bonnie is a clinical herbalist and holistic health consultant. Sorry. Welcome to the show, Bonnie.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, what caused you or what made you want to go into holistic health and becoming a clinical herbalist?
Oh, it's a good long question. I didn't start off saying I wanted to be an herbalist. I kind of had a longer journey there. I actually spent a little over a decade working as a goldsmith before transitioning into being an herbalist. And I had a lot of life experiences where I learned some hands-on things about herbs. I lived in an intentional community and a permaculture farm that like about 15 years ago. That was kind of my introduction to things. And I just was always into natural health and herbal medicine. And I had some chronic health conditions throughout my life that I wanted to treat naturally. And so I think that a lot of that is a personal journey. And I just acquired a lot of knowledge about herbal medicine and natural medicine. And so in my friends group, everybody would refer to me as the medicine woman. And they're like, you're a medicine woman, you're our encyclopedia, you know all of this stuff. Like you really should do something with this someday. And I was like, yeah, I don't really know like where to go and all of this. And I was watching actually a podcast, and somebody mentioned that their wife had a master's of science degree in herbal medicine. And it was like a light bulb moment. I was like, oh, I like the sound of that. you know
Right.
it was a way to take something that was a love of plants and natural medicine and turn it into something a little bit more official and have some training under my belt. And so I did a search, and I really looked into what college I wanted to go to, and then started working towards my master's of science degree. And I'll be starting in the fall my PhD in integrated health to kind of and continue my education so that I can provide other offerings to people. I'm currently a student as well at David Winston's Herbal Studies School, and David Winston is a really world-known herbalist. And so I'm always looking for ways to improve, learn about other herbs. There's thousands of herbs on this earth with so many different uses, and one can never think you're done learning. So
I
it's
was
it's a
going to say
journey.
that with that, like you're never done because there's so much, and sometimes we're still discovering some new things, new
Yeah.
plant life deep in the Amazon and other places. So that is definitely an area where we're never done learning.
You're never done learning, and the more you learn, the more things you find that are fascinating. So I've been
Mm.
studying some traditional Chinese medicine, and in traditional Chinese medicine, they don't typically use the herbs in their natural state like we do in Western herbalism. Most of them are processed in some way, and these processes are usually natural processes. So they'll stir fry them in rice vinegar. And by doing this process, it alters the energetics of the herb. And you can use this to your advantage. So if you have an herb that's very, very drying, but it helps with a certain condition that a client of yours has, but you don't want to dry them out too much, you can say stir fry it in honey and soften the herb's energetic so it doesn't have such a harsh effect on your client. And so there's so many beautiful things that we can learn about herbs that really take you down different paths. And I think the most fascinating part about it is, for many, many years, I studied astrology, and some people believe in it, some people don't. And I feel like the same thing applies. The more you study astrology, the more you go down the rabbit hole and you start to learn all these different modalities. And then it becomes very personalized to the individual. And herbal medicine is just like that. The more that you learn all these little intricacies, even like the synergy between two herbs, you can have two herbs that you combine together, and they can actually increase the benefit of the other herbs. Or you can have an herb that has medicinal potential, but it has a very like low therapeutic range. So it could be very toxic. But if you combine it with another herb, it mitigates the toxicity of the other herb, allowing you to use it for its health benefits. And so there's all these just beautiful rabbit holes you can travel down when you get to know the little idiosyncrasies. And I think sometimes, especially when you're learning about herbal medicine, there's hundreds of herbs and it can be overwhelming, all of this information that you're
Mhm.
taking in. And I'm a big fan of when I learn about an herb, I go on and I buy the herb. And if it can grow in my local area, I work on growing it too, because if you grow the herb, then you really get a relationship. And if we think back to the history of medicine, and this has been a big topic of mine lately that I've been talking to people about, we talk about herbal medicine as alternative medicine, but it's actually the original medicine. And if we look back historically, if you were to become a physician, you were required to know how to grow plants. In fact, physicians had their own medicine gardens, and they were deeply, deeply trained on the not just the things that herbs are good for, but the plant itself, how it grows, how it moves, how it thinks, and how it behaves. And that's when I think you can really call yourself an herbalist, when you can
Mm.
understand the mental processes of a plant.
It's very fascinating. And I agree. I mean, I don't know why it's called alternative because it was the original. There wasn't pharmaceutical things like, even if we think back 100 years ago, which isn't really that long. Yes, there were some medications and things then, but not like we have today. So if we go back 200 years, I don't know what kind of even medications would have been available then, and we have so much now. And so it was the earth, what we could
It
find, the
was.
herbs, the plants, the everything, and not these pharmaceutical drugs. And I always say with a bit of a caveat, I am somewhat anti-medication and anti, I'm at more anti-big pharma, in the sense of we do have so many herbs and different things that we can be using that we used to use. And now we're getting to know even more about these things and what they can do, as opposed to just going and taking a pill, because I just
Yeah.
find that pills just generally mask the problem. They don't fix the condition. So let's look at actually fixing the underlying problem, which is the actual problem. But I'm glad we have it because there are times that we need pain medication and we need doctors and we need surgeries and we need those things. But I think we really should be leaning more to the natural way and not just take a pill.
That a blending between the two, because there's a lot of research being conducted today about the synergy of herbal medicine and say cancer treatment. And there is
Mhm.
a lot of evidence that shows that some herbs work really well in conjunction with chemotherapy and actually make the chemotherapy work better. And if you look at other countries like in China, herbal medicine is the cornerstone of their cancer treatments. And we have to look at like why. Well, part of it is they didn't have a lot of money that our medical industry does here in the US, and so they had to develop other modalities. And so when they did start implementing more of the Western medicine techniques, they already had their herbal protocols, so they combined the two, and they have much higher rates of success in treating cancer than we do. And it's because of that blending and the merging of the two. And one of the things that like I get people who come into my clinic, and one of the big things is they want to get off of their pharmaceuticals. And
Mm.
sometimes people have come in and they've stopped taking them. I'm like, well, you need to start
Oh,
taking it again. And we need to work with your primary care physician and talk about how we transition and we taper, because it's not good for you to just discontinue taking something. Your body has
right.
adjusted to that. And so, but I'm always very willing to work with people's doctors, but it doesn't usually go the other side of the fence. And a lot of that is because there isn't an understanding of how these herbs and how these things work. But in my years of doing this, I've actually been able to form some really beautiful relationships with some doctors who have actually said, you really changed my perspective on herbal medicine
Nice.
and working with my clients too. and they can see what is taking place with their clients and the improvement in health benefits. Because, like you mentioned, the pharmaceuticals are not necessarily a cure. Most
Mm.
often, they're a mask that's mitigating the problem, but it is not working to heal and restore the body on a deeper level. And that's part of where the blending between the two, I think, is important, because herbs do take longer to work, because you're talking about, it's not a pill where it's instantly relieving your pain. Those herbs are working on a cellular level to heal and repair the damage, which doesn't happen instantly. And we live in a world where we want instantaneous results.
Oh,
We
yes.
want an answer to that email the second that we send it. And that's not the way that nature works. If we just look at the life of a plant, it takes time to grow. And a lot of our plant medicines that we use, some of the plants take 7 to 10 years to reach maturity before they're viable as for use for making medicine out of them. And so there is this time frame. And even some of our simplest herbal medicines are not ready made. Like, for instance, let's say orange peel is commonly used as a carminative that's added to other formulas to help with digestive problems, calming acid reflux, a whole long list of things. But the orange peel has to be dried for an entire year before
Oh,
it's
wow.
turned into medicine. And this is the traditional way of doing things. And in our modern, fast paced world, people don't want to wait a year for an herb to cure to use it in a medicine. So we see a lot of problems happening on the market with herbal medicine where people are trying to expedite the process. And we need to work alongside of nature, not against her. And I'll say a quote that I said on a recent podcast that I was on. Like, when you're a kid and you're sick and your mother is taking care of you and she's nurturing and caring for you, she's providing you good food, chicken noodle soup, and herbs, supplements, medicine, whatever your mother was into that she gave you. Now, aside from the bad tasting medicine, you wouldn't refuse your mother's nurturing and care. Well, the
Right.
earth is the same way. She is our mother who is providing nurturing and caring. And she's like, here is the medicine that you need. But it takes time, and it takes a willingness to be able to use and accept that. And I think it's beautiful, the time that something takes and the process of being with the plants versus trying to force them into a high-paced lifestyle that we live.
Pardon the interruption. If you're enjoying this episode and you're someone who values performance, clarity, and personal growth, then you're going to love my Mind Matters weekly newsletter. Every week, I send out a quick, powerful piece designed to help high achievers like you master your mindset, upgrade your habits, and lead with more clarity and fulfillment. It's not fluff, it's science backed, actionable, and easy to digest. It as your weekly reset button to realign with the leader you're becoming. So if you want to go deeper than what we've covered here on the show, then head over to www.sallypeterson.com. That's me, and subscribe. Your next breakthrough just might be one email away. Now back to the show. And I think too, with that is the problems that we're having for the most part have built up over time as well, right? Unless somebody's been in a car accident or things like that. But even if somebody has had a heart attack, there has been that buildup of plaque and cholesterol in the veins for years, decades, even. If I'm developing diabetes and my pancreas isn't producing the insulin, well, it doesn't just happen overnight. Those are times too. And so I think along with it, people need to really look at the whole lifestyle, right? Like we didn't just get sick overnight, so we shouldn't really expect to get better overnight in a lot of cases. And those things do take time. And I think too, as with the pharmaceuticals, it's great to not feel that because we can take a pill and feel better, but to realize that it does take time, but it also took time to happen as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, speaking of like the time too, a lot of people want to do something as soon as they get sick. Like, okay, now
Mm,
I have this condition and I want to do something about it. And even simple things like just a common cold or flu. People like, oh, well, I'll start taking echinacea now that I'm sick. But it
right.
doesn't actually work that way. Echinacea is really only effective if you've been taking it for a long time beforehand to help to build and bolster your immune system. If you start taking echinacea once you're sick, it's going to have no effect. And I think that part of that misunderstanding about how to use herbal medicine is what's led to some people feeling like it doesn't work because there isn't this, and part of that too, I mean, it's a strong point of mine, some of the FDA regulations surrounding herbal medicines and supplements, because it makes it hard to put out literature that helps people to understand it, because that is considered making structure and function claims about your supplements. So unless you're purely having a website or running podcasts to inform people, as because I have an herbal products manufacturing company, and so I can't say a lot of things on my website or on my social media account or anywhere for that fact about my products, because then I would be making structure and function claims. So it's hard for manufacturers of, say, let's take something simple like echinacea, to explain to the public that you need to take this for a long time beforehand in order for it to work and function. So it's a loss of education, and education starts when we're young. And this summer I had this really beautiful opportunity to educate some young kids. So I have a nonprofit called Michigan Protects, and our mission is to plant and protect native Michigan medicinal plants that are at risk for extinction in the wild. So we're talking about things like American ginseng and golden seal that are typically not grown on farms and are wild harvested for our sources of medicine. And our nonprofit was gearing up for a huge planting day where we had 18,000 seeds and several hundred
Wow.
plants to plant out in a preserve that we were working on building up its natural medicinal plant stands. And so we enlisted the help of a local Boy Scout troop and the National Honor Society. And they got I don't want to call it points, but they got hours for their service requirements for those organizations. And they came out to the woods with us. And part of the beautiful thing about it is I got to teach them about herbal medicine, something that they didn't even know existed, that they could
Wow.
find plants out in the wild that would help them with certain ailments. And so at the end of it, the leaders came to me and said, this was the most amazing volunteer opportunity our kids have ever presented or had been part of. And they absolutely loved it. They all had a really wonderful time. And they were all running around the forest, just absolutely joyous and happy to work and to plant these plants and to learn about what they could do for them. And so that's one of the things that we need to start working towards having in our school systems and our educations and in our home, is teaching kids about these very simple things that they can do to help support their health from a young age, so that
Right.
we can work towards preventing some of these diseases. We'll call them metabolic syndromes, because they're kind of, that's a good umbrella for a lot of the problems that Americans are facing, is a metabolic syndrome. And so having to support the pancreas, support blood sugar levels, to support cardiovascular health. And there are so many herbs that have the ability to lower blood sugar levels naturally, slowly, to help support cardiovascular health. And that when we can implement these into our daily diet from a young age, we will grow up as adults who have much stronger constitutions. And that's what I would love to see to happen. And not so much that every person in the world starts using herbal medicine, but that we start teaching the young kids how to have a stronger, healthier life from the onset. Because I have teenagers. I can't keep them from eating candy or getting
Right.
French fries at the local hangout place with their friends. They're going to drink
Right.
soda. They're going to do these things, even if it's not allowed in our household.
Yeah. So they do
But
it outside when mom's not around.
when mom's not watching. But I can help them to learn how to strengthen their body, Though my 13-year-old son runs away when he sees me coming with a tincture bottle. He runs away screaming. Um, but there's other things you could do to make herbs taste good as well too. But it's important for kids to kind of have a foundation of
Right.
what the plants can do for them and how they can live these healthier lives.
Right. And I mean, teenagers, they'll just do the opposite of what we want. So it's just that timing of it. But so even starting out even younger is good because then they have that a bit of base knowledge and interest and things. So here might be a difficult question to answer. Are there certain herbs that people should be taking regularly? That's kind of an overall health improvement because I know like there's so many and they do different things, but are there maybe some key 3 to 5 or something that generally kind of would help improve people's day-to-day health that are easy to take, and maybe if they want, they could grow at home, maybe not. Like what would be kind of if somebody said, what would be that kind of 3 to 5 that I should take just for overall health improvement? Are there some that would make a difference?
Absolutely. It's hard to narrow it down to 3 to 5, but there are
Yeah.
lots of things that you can implement into your daily life. So I'm going to say a broader category of herbs in your cooking. So we're
Okay.
talking about spices like turmeric, thyme, oregano. Those would be like the big three. Like find a way to get them into your food. And I'm a big fan of Indian food because they use a lot of spices like cumin and coriander. And cumin and coriander are really beautiful because they increase peristalsis. So they cause your stomach lining to contract, which helps to break all the gunk off of the walls of the digestive
Ah,
system, helping to maintain a healthy digestive tract. Turmeric is really amazing for as calming inflammation throughout the body. It's really systemic, the effects. And so if you add a little bit of black pepper to your turmeric, it activates it. So that's a really beautiful, easy one that you can add to your diet. And then the herbs like thyme and oregano that are really full of those essential oils and those aromatics, those are really going to help to support the immune system. And so putting herbs in your diet is like one of the best things that you can do. And so one of the spices, quote unquote, that I recommend to my clients, especially ones who are struggling with metabolic syndrome, is cardamom. And you want
mm.
the cardamom to be as fresh as possible. So when you buy that cardamom, if it doesn't have a strong smell, it's old. And sometimes I recommend to my clients that you get the fresh seed pods and you grind it yourself. So you're really making sure that you get those volatile oils before they've escaped from the herb. And you can put this on everything from your yogurt to your oatmeal. You can put it in your cookies and your baking. There's so many wonderful ways to include cardamom in your diet. And I tell everyone, anytime you think you could put something like cinnamon, which cinnamon also has a lot of really wonderful health benefits, but anywhere you could put cinnamon in something, you can put cardamom in it as well. And so that's the easiest thing for everybody to do right out the gate. And then if you were to grow one herb in your garden and only one herb, because I get asked this question a lot, if you could only grow one herb, what would that one herb be? And I always apologize to all the herbs in my plant garden. It's not that this plant's my favorite, but I think it has a lot of easy uses for the common household problems. And that would be yarrow. And yarrow is so easy to grow in a wide variety of climates. And it is
Okay.
really helpful as a blood cleanser to take as a spring tonic to keep your lymphatic system healthy. It can be used when you have the cold or the flu, or if you have a fever. And the beautiful thing about yarrow, and this is where we get into the energetics, the tea can be drank cold or it can be drank hot. So if you drink the tea hot, it has one effect on the body. Say you have a fever with chills, so you got a little cold symptoms there. We can drink it hot and it's going to increase sweating and warm up the body, because
Mm.
what is the body trying to do when you have chills? It's trying to warm up the body to kill the virus. But then you can drink it cold if you have a very, very high fever where the body's heated up too much. And then it's going to act as a diaphoretic, and it's going to move fluids out of the body. It's going to cause the sweating, and it's going to cause you to release those fluids, cooling off your body. So it's really beautiful because there's so many different uses for one plant. And even people who can't grow anything can grow yarrow because it is like a weed. And if you're a master gardener, you're going to say, oh, no, no, I don't want that in my garden because it grows like a weed. But that's the beautiful part about it. And then there's different uses of the plants. If you cut off the flowers, you can use the flowers for one type of medicine, and then the leaves are another type of medicine. So it's got so many multi-purposes that I over time I've kind of narrowed it down to that would be my one herb that I would choose for people to grow in their gardens.
Oh, that's fantastic. And it's interesting, just to go back a little bit, that you said about the cardamom and cinnamon. I have a friend of mine, and she would make, we would meet up and we would have her special coffee. And in Europe, we have the coffee pots where you put the coffee kind of water in the bottom and then the coffee, and then you put the top on it, and it comes through. And she didn't tell me what it was at the time, but she takes the cardamom and chops it up and sprinkles some cinnamon and puts it with the coffee, and then it brews as it brews into the coffee, and it's so good.
Yes.
It is a really nice coffee and healthy. I did not know
Yeah.
that. I just thought it tasted good. So that was a benefit for that. And then also what I've been starting to drink in the mornings is I'll have half a lemon, and I'll put some chia seeds in it and leave it sit for a few hours. And then I'll take that and add the turmeric with the black pepper, because I did hear that the black pepper was good for that. And I would put in fresh ginger and a little bit of a fresh raw honey and apple cider vinegar and some
Ooh.
hot water. And I love it. Like, it's so good.
All right, everybody listening to this, you need to take that recipe that she just gave you because I could find like 500 different benefits in that for supporting your health from your liver to your digestive system to your heart to everything really contained in that. Absolutely beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, and you know, you can adjust it, right? Because sometimes people with the apple cider vinegar, like, I don't mind apple cider vinegar. I can I could take a tablespoon of it and drink it and follow it up with some water, because I know it's not good to be doing that too regularly. But I know some people that don't like it, and so I always say, well, just adjust. You know, have a little bit less or add a little bit more honey, because I find the honey um kind of helps with that vinegar. Um, and I don't really measure a lot. Like, sometimes I'll use fresh grated as if I can with everything, and then I just throw it in. Or with the ginger, I'll let it sit in some water for a little while if it's fresh, just to get the flavor and stuff out. And then I actually, when I shred it, I eat, like, because it's grated so it doesn't dissolve, but then I'll just eat the ginger and the turmeric and the seeds with, so I drink it and eat it with a spoon. And it's just great. I really enjoy having it, and I do it in the mornings on an empty stomach. Pardon
Yeah,
the
I mean the
interruption. If you're liking the show so far, please like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. It really means a lot to me. It helps grow the show and the channel and to the stomach.
Yeah, I mean the herbalist in me is just like I absolutely love that so much. And if, for the listeners, there's a wealth of health benefits, and probably the biggest one is on the digestive system. And I don't think we all realize like just how abused our digestive systems are, and they naturally decline as we age. So we see a lot of elderly people who kind of have like wasting syndrome. They're really struggling to get nutrition because their digestive system is no longer absorbing any nutrients for their food. And one of the biggest problems with that is as we age, our body produces less and less hydrochloric acid, which is our basic necessity of digestive enzymes. And so one of the best ways to improve the production of hydrochloric acid is through our bitters, like ginger. And so having something like a little bit of ginger or some lemon, something that has that kind of bitter tang to it, just before a meal activates the body's production of hydrochloric acid. So a little remedy like you have there taking, you can make it in the morning and then take a little sip of it throughout the day before you eat a meal, and you're going to help to
Mm.
improve your body's digestive system as well. So it's really, that's a really beautiful recipe you have there.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not mine. It's not. I don't want to be taking claim for it. I heard it. I can't remember where. Because before I used to do just lemon water in the morning or apple cider vinegar with water. And then I heard stuff and I'm like, okay, I'll try it. And then I heard the pepper activates with the turmeric. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just raw pepper. I just a few turns of peppercorn in it. Um, and I really enjoy it. So I think for people too, it's finding things that you like and mixing them together. And for me, that recipe is great, even though it's not um like I don't totally measure everything. One day I was making it and I was pouring in the apple cider vinegar and I a lot came out and I was like, oh, I guess I need a strong apple cider vinegar one today.
Yeah.
Um,
And you know, the beautiful thing is too, because I can tell you have beautiful skin, that apple cider vinegar for women is really going to help to improve your overall skin health and help to reduce some of those effects of aging. Apple cider vinegar is a super, super potent medicine. I have 4 kids and they all love their apples. So we collect our apple cores and apple peels because we have a little peeler machine. And so we
mhm.
make apple cider vinegar in our house by the gallon. Super, super easy to make for anybody out there who likes their apple cider vinegar. And if you like to eat apples too, just get yourself a little $20 apple core, save those cores and those peels, and you soak them in some water with some sugar. You can find a recipe for it online. And you can very easily make yourself some fresh apple cider vinegar. And that fresh, unfiltered apple cider vinegar is super, super good for your health as well, too.
I'm gonna have to look into that because I think that's probably better than buying the apple cider vinegar. Because like it's good, but they have to add stuff to it to have shelf life and things like that. So
Yep, and it's
um
filtered and separated from its mother, and things degrade, especially when they sit in plastic bottles over time and they sit on a shelf. So if you're having it regularly, and the biggest part about it though is that interpersonal relationship with your food. It's the same thing as like growing some food or growing some herbs in a little garden outside of your house. You have a close relationship with the plants. And this is like one of my more kind of spiritual sides of plants. You know, plants, we tend to think of, a lot of people just think of them as these things, but they have a consciousness of their own. Science has proven this. If you doubt me, you can find plenty of evidence online, and not just a crazy plant lady, but they have feelings and emotions and a consciousness, and your interaction with them improves the health benefits of the plant itself. So in making your medicine, it's the same way too. You have this interpersonal relationship where there is just this kind of closer bond between your body and the medicine. And so that's like with the growing the yarrow, like that herb is there with your being. And just like your closest friend, the longer that you know each other, the more they know and understand your body language, what you're feeling, what you're thinking without you saying it. Plants are very receptive to body language. And so they can understand. And there's a lot of really beautiful plant healer people out there who will tell you that the plants talk to you. And one of my teachers, David Winston, in one of his classes was talking about his discovery of a use for nettles. So a lot of people know the health benefits of nettles, really high in minerals and iron, has a lot of health benefits. But he had a patient who was struggling with kidney decline and kidney dysfunction, and they were declining pretty quickly. And he had been learning about how plants can talk to you and the way they move and this and that, and it hadn't really settled in with him yet. But he was sitting out in a field one day and really struggling over this client, and the nettle just started to move. And it was his kind of one of his experiences of the plant talking to him, and he's like, well, nettle leaf doesn't really help with kidneys. And the plant told him, no, not my leaves, my seeds. use my seeds. And so using nettle seed is not a popular thing. Nobody uses nettle seed in herbal medicine. But he found that it really wonderfully supported his client, and helped them to live a little bit longer than they would have otherwise. And so he uses it in one of his formulas, the nettle seed. And so the plants will form deeper relationships with you the closer that you get with them as well.
It's very, very fascinating. I did not know that. Although I do know, as we all know, like we're energy, right? And we feel different things, and to have that connection. I grew up with a lot of plants. My mom, I think one time when I was a kid, we counted and we had like 50 plants in our house. And we didn't have a big house, but she had like hanging things with like plants and plants and plants. And so I've always had many plants. And to me it just makes house a home, and it's nice. And I've got a really good friend of mine who does a lot of gardening and fresh stuff. And every year she complains when she has to do the canning. She's like, I'm not doing this anymore. This is my last year. And I'm like, yep, every year. And then obviously she does it still every year. But um, yeah, just the food, and it's just better too when we have our own garden, our own fresh stuff. We know what it's getting. We know if she doesn't use any pesticides or things like that, because um what is it called when she plants certain plants together, and certain herbs and certain things, then it keeps bugs away and insects because of the way, I guess, the smells from each of them, what they repel and what they bring. And so there is a great way to have them working together in our garden, and then of course working for us.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about the interplanting of different species together. Just in,
Mhm.
like, you can look at their root structures. Some plants, their roots hover very close to the surface, and some have like deep tap roots. And so the ones with the deep tap roots are able to bring nutrients from deep below the surface, closer to the surface, which helps the other support the other plants. And then some plants use different nutrients than other plants. So like tomatoes are
Mm.
going to be heavy nitrogen users, and then the bean plants are going to put the nitrogen back in the soil because they're sequestering nitrogen from the atmosphere and putting it back into the earth. And then there's of course lots of plants, that here's your thyme, your oregano, your rosemary. All of those really aromatic herbs deter pests. You can actually put sprigs of thyme and rosemary around areas where you want to repel ants and bees, and they could be natural repellents for the house. Like a lot of people are familiar with the citronella plants for
Yes.
keeping the mosquitoes away. So it's the same thing. Those plants have those same needs to keep pest away from them. And so there are those companion plantings. And then there's also companion foods like strawberries and spinach together, because you need vitamin
Oh.
C in order to absorb the iron from the spinach, because the body requires both of them for synthesis within inside the body. So there's a lot of really like common food pairings throughout history, and I love this one. I'm not Jewish or anything, but there are some Jewish traditions in their food diets that make a lot of sense. There's actually a lot of things that are in the Jewish religious traditions that have like physiological reasons for them that they didn't know back then. But like eating the meat with the mother's milk, so putting cheese on your hamburger, for instance, which is an all-American meal, causes a gastrointestinal upset. It causes gas and
Oh.
bloating within the body and can cause damage to the intestines. So there's some foundations for a lot of these traditions, and not just the Jewish traditions. There's lots of quote unquote religious traditions throughout history that when you look at them now through a scientific lens, you can find the reason why those are very, very valid. And so I'm a big fan of looking at history and looking at some of these things, and understanding how they really influence our lives. And like one of my favorite essential oils to use is frankincense. And I'll say the caveat that you have to make sure that it's ethically sourced, because there are problems with forced labor of women in like Somalia for the harvesting of frankincense. But if
Okay.
you look throughout history, what is the number one herb that is used in every single religion, in their temples, in their incense, in their literature. You know, you got the Bible, what was given to baby Jesus, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And so frankincense and myrrh together actually have a plant synergism. And science has proven that the two plants, when combined together, work better than they do alone. And
Oh, wow.
frankincense has so many healing properties. And so when you look at why was it used, because it had, you know, anti-tumor effects, it had skin healing properties, it was rejuvenative, it can be ingested when properly done, and it could be used in different modalities on the body. So it was not just an incense that was used in all of the religious ceremonies or something that was given as an offering. It was also a very vital medicine that was used in almost every single culture and every single religion worldwide.
Wow. Wow, that's interesting. And can it be grown at home?
So frankincense cannot. It is a
Okay.
very, very unique tree. Mainly grows in Somalia, and it grows like hovering off a cliff edge.
Oh,
And
okay.
and so it's very unusual. And I'll point out something very interesting about plants that grow out of rocks. So another one of my favorite subjects, when a plant can grow in such a hospitable condition as hanging off a cliff growing from a rock, that is one powerful, vital, strong plant. And
Mhm.
some of the best medicinal plants are grown under the harshest conditions. And this is actually why we found with some plant medicines, when we take it out of its natural growing habitat and we farm it and we give it everything it needs, it's not as good of medicine, because when the plant is out in the wild and it has to see drought or flooding, harsh conditions, sunlight, all of these things, it actually causes it to produce greater amounts of the medicine that we call medicine, because that same medicine the plant needs to protect itself against those harsh conditions. And so when it's grown under these optimal conditions, it doesn't have to produce that medicine because it doesn't need it itself. So back to the frankincense, no, it is not something that you can grow. If you have a greenhouse, if you know, it needs very, very warm conditions. So if you live in a desert area or you have a greenhouse, you have that very warm, dry, deserty kind of conditions, you most certainly can grow the plant. And but how the frankincense is harvested is it's done by slicing into the plant itself, and the plant oozes out a sap in which it uses to heal and seal its wound. And that sap is what's collected and is what is called frankincense. And so we go back to, like, I always love like history again. You know, if you look back historically, they would look at a plant. And so, for instance, the plant eyebright, well, it got its name because it looks like an eye. And so this is what's called the doctrine of signatures. And so the ancients said, well, it looks like an eye, it must be good for the eye. An eye bright plant, in fact, does have many benefits for the eyes. And so the same thing you could think of like frankincense, like how do you get it? You get it by cutting a wound into the plant. And what is the primary medicinal use for frankincense? For healing wounds, tumors, abscesses, things that come from the surface of the skin through some form of damage or dis-ease to the surface of the skin. And that's what frankincense is good for. So you can look at the doctrine of signatures in that too. And this is where science in many ways has confirmed a lot of those historical uses of plants, because there was some ancient wisdom, because they were able to understand, communicate, and have that interpersonal relationship with the plants that we just don't have today, because we have science and we rely so heavily upon science. And I'm not anti-science. I'm all for it 100%. My herbal products company, we have a lot of science-based research into our products. And it's important that you have that to support some of those historical uses as well. But I always love that one about frankincense, the breaking of the skin and the healing of the skin, you know, can be used
Yeah,
together.
absolutely. It's incredible. Well, Bonnie, I feel like we could talk for hours. And we've
Yes.
barely even touched the surface of things, but I know people definitely got a lot of good tips and things that they can work on, a few things that they can easily do for overall health. But if people want more information, they want to work with you, or maybe donate for your nonprofit, or kind of work with you in any ways, what are the best ways for people to get in touch with you?
So I have kind of a landing page that's called bonniediarcangelo.com. So it's my name without the apostrophe. And on that page, you will find links to every single one of my websites, projects that I'm working on, art, you name it. It's on there and you can find it there.
Perfect. And I will make sure that that link is in the show notes to make it easy for everybody because there's just so much information and so many good things that we can be doing for our own health, for our own bodies, and for the environment. I mean, it's all interconnected. So thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.